My name is John Mursky. I am chair of the Ann Arbor Energy Commission. And as chair, I'm calling this meeting to order. I am participating from Edmonds, Washington. Welcome to the April 11th, 2023 electronic meeting of the Energy Commission. This virtual meeting is to affect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We will conduct this meeting like in-person meetings. Commissioners, during roll call, please indicate your current location. Also, during the meeting, please remain on camera, just as you would be visible during in-person meetings. Finally, mute your microphone when not speaking. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the two public comment opportunities, please call one of the following two toll-free numbers: 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID number 956-8718-7876 on your phone. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16 and AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. Joe, would you please read the land acknowledgement statement?
Yep. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including Odawa, Ojibwe, and Bodewadmi, and the Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained, generally in unconscionable ways, from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Great, thank you. So, hopefully everybody has had a chance to take a look at the agenda. Is there a motion to the agenda as posted, as well as a second? So a motion from Commissioner McComber and a second from Commissioner Harp. Any discussion, any changes, requests as far as the agenda is concerned? Hearing none or seeing no hands raised. Commissioners, please raise your hand if you're in favor of approving the agenda as posted, and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes is next. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Before we go into that, do you want to do roll call first?
Oh, yeah, I jumped over that. Thank you. Thanks for being observant. First, before I do the roll call, Joe and I both were informed by Commissioner Overpeck. He is out of town and he is unable to attend because he's attending an event this evening. And Councilmember Briggs is traveling to Colorado, so she's also unable to attend as well. So thank you, Joe. Let's go ahead and do the roll call then.
Thanks. Commissioner Maycomer.
Present from my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Levin.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Chair Mursky.
Here from my Airbnb in Washington.
Vice Chair Colvin Garcia.
Here, Ann Arbor.
As we said, Councilmember Briggs is unable to make it tonight. Councilmember Radina.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner McCoy. Not present for now. Commissioner Kerber.
Here in Ann Arbor.
As stated, Commissioner Overpeck will be unable to make it. Commissioner Smith.
Present for my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Cohenin, not present for now. Commissioner Zittelman,
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner McKenna,
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Harp,
Here from Ann Arbor.
and Commissioner Berkowitz.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for being present. So we've approved the agenda, and now we move on to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as posted and a second? Moved by Councilmember Medina and a second by Commissioner Colin Garcia. Any changes? I have one minor one. Joe, in the vote that we took on the one resolution, I don't have it here in front of me. You indicate that Councilmember Briggs voted nay, but the count shows 0.
Yeah, the software in Legistar, for some reason, when it comes to the council members, it doesn't give them a tally of a number.
Yeah.
I am not sure why. I've talked to the person we're looking at it, but yeah, it's similarly for others when I think Regina wasn't here, and same thing. It said didn't count the number for it. So.
Okay. Yeah, I know that in some commissions they don't have voting rights, but in both the Environmental and Energy Commission they do. So okay, good to know that. Okay, so anything else meeting minute wise? If not, then all those in favor of approving the minutes as posted, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? So it approves unanimously. Thank you very much. So now we have arrived at our first opportunity for persons to speak and provide public input for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 956-8718-7876. This information, as I mentioned, is also displayed on the agenda and the video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. To electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any background noise so that we may hear you clearly. And finally, please state your name and address and at the beginning of your comments.
I don't have any hands raised, but just going to give it a few seconds here. Okay. Caller ending in 134.
Thank you, Mr. Lang and Chair Mursky. This is Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court, calling about the gas ban ordinance resolution. The Planning Commission, which was taking the lead, has given up on the ordinance, at least for now. It was last discussed there in December. The Commission Chair has cited lawsuit threats as a reason to step back. But there's only been one threat I've seen from lawyers for the Home Builders Association of Michigan, or HBAM. HBAM also threatened the state of Michigan over its state energy code revision. This is a very backwards-looking organization which has sued the state before and lost, and which our local builders split off from several years ago. HBAM's lawyers shouldn't be dictating city policy. I mean, did we really think that we could meaningfully reduce the city's emissions without antagonizing companies invested in the status quo? Change doesn't work that way. The 820 plan, 3 years in, is failing in plain view because it's coming up against forces that are determined to resist real change. That includes the construction industry and most developers, and DTE Energy. But the answer is not to back down. over 90 cities and counties have now restricted gas in new construction. There have been a few lawsuits, but those cities are holding firm. 820 did have a strategy. The state would pass the 2021 IECC Zero Code Appendix. That didn't happen, predictably, I would say, and we wasted 3 years while approving 22 separate gas burning developments. Then we got the gas ban ordinance, and presumably there was some legal basis for putting that forward, but we quickly caved to HBAM and DTE on that. There is no plan C that I can see. The heat franchise discussion has nothing to do with this. I don't see ending new gas connections on the list of ideas for tonight, and even if it were, it would happen too late. Every 2 to 4 weeks, we're faced with another gas burning project. Tomorrow, the Design Review Board will consider the Core Spaces project on William. 16 stories, 230,000 square feet. Gas heat, apparently. This building alone will put 1,580 metric tons CO2 equivalent emissions each year into the atmosphere from burning gas. In 2 weeks or a month, it'll be something else. This is madness. We can't be locking in new fossil fuel infrastructure for decades to come.
30 seconds.
So please approve the resolution tonight. We need to send the most forceful message possible, as fast as possible. Even consider removing the second resolve clause. It's carefully worded, but no matter how it's worded, I fear it will be an excuse to ignore the first resolve clause, the ordinance itself. I think this is already happening.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. We have one more caller ending in 228.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Greg Woodring. I'm president of Ann Arbor for Public Power. Calling in for one, to also full-heartedly endorse passing the recommendation on the gas ban ordinance. As the previous speaker fantastically put it, it's absolutely paramount that we move on banning these gas connections. Well, renegotiating the gas franchise agreement with DTE is prudent and just good governance. Absolutely should be done, and we should get every concession we can. We can't continue to allow these gas burning buildings if we ever want to reach our climate goals. It's simply locking in costs that we're going to have to pay off later. But I also wanted to call in to just raise attention to the fact that we are moving into budgetary season. The feasibility study on municipalization that this commission recommended back in December of 21 and was approved in January of 22 by City Council will be finishing here in June. However, we are looking to approve a budget in May for the city. Just a reminder on the timeline for moving forward with municipalization should the city choose to do so. The next step after this feasibility study would be to get a hard valuation, a phase 2 feasibility study, which would tell us more directly what the actual cost of DTE's assets would be and would help the city in legal processes during the acquisition. While we do not know currently if the city wants to move forward with municipalization, and certainly the results of the feasibility study will inform that, it seems prudent to at least entertain the idea that the results may be positive enough for the city to want to move forward with municipalization. And given that P2 is recommending that the city put a budgetary placeholder in for the study of $500,000 to be prepared in the event that the city wants to move forward with that. That way we don't need to worry about moving around funding or figuring out where it's going to be cut from if we decide to fund such a study throughout the rest of the year. So just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. If you are interested in more about what the process looks like and what next steps would be, I encourage you to reach out to AnnArborPublicPower@gmail.com. We'd be happy to set up time to talk you through it. Also, the July 2021 Energy Commission meeting Chris Bizdock was in attendance. It's still on YouTube. And he's an energy lawyer from Traverse City that laid it out very well. It's very informative. I would recommend that you all give it a look. So thank you very much for your time. Looking forward to a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
No more callers.
Okay. Good. I think we'll go ahead and move on then. We're now in the body of the meeting, and the first point on the agenda is a presentation about an Ann Arbor heating franchise discussion, or our gas franchise, and we are honored to have Missy Stoltz present to us tonight.
Hi, everybody. Forgive me.
Missy.
Hi, it's good to see you all. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I don't feel fabulous and my voice is probably going to go, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to do my best. I'm really excited to be here today. You are the first in our public engagement process. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. And so as you know, City Council authorized the administrator to begin exploring a new heating franchise. And you are the first stakeholder group that we want to talk to about that. So just bear with me for a second. I've got just a few slides and I want to walk through for today. Just want to share a little bit about what a franchise is, as well as what a franchise is not, a little bit of background about kind of what we've been doing. And then I want to kick it over just to a listening session. So we want to hear from you, your ideas, and I have some initial kind of thoughts. Just they're really nothing more than just kind of conversation starters to get your head thinking about the kinds of variables you may want to give feedback on. And then I'm going to end with next steps. And of course, there's lots of ways to engage in this process. So don't worry if you didn't get a chance to look at the agenda until right now and weren't prepared for this conversation. That's okay. We will have lots of opportunity for your feedback. So let me start by sharing what a franchise is. Some of you may know this, but a franchise is a contract between a local unit of government, in our case, the city, and a utility. And that franchise really governs two things. It governs the use of the public rights of way, right? Our streets, think where someone like Comcast or DTCast might lay pipes or their infrastructure. It governs what they do, what kind of quality they have to return infrastructure to, the kinds of communications that may take place between the city and that utility, kind of all elements about the use of that public rights of way. And the second thing in Michigan that a franchise does is it sets the conditions under which that company, doesn't have to be a utility, but that company may, for a set period of time, provide that specific service, right? So one governs use of rights of ways, the other governs kind of, if you will, the way they operate in the community. And we've also seen in recent years, franchises have included some additional terms, including in places like Chicago, Salt Lake City, and San Diego, where they've successfully advanced affordability, equity, and clean energy goals via their franchises or via associated agreements, often known as city utility partnerships, which come out of franchise negotiations. Thanks, y'all. And you can find more about this on our website. But I do want to take a moment, and I'm not going to go through this image. Many of you know this, but for those who don't, and for our viewers, the gas system is actually quite complicated. It's not as simple as we get gas out of the system, we move it through pipes, and instantly it's in your home. There's actually a lot that goes into natural gas use in a home or in a business, all the way from kind of the production side of things where we're drilling, we have to do separation within that system. We have to refine the materials that are coming out. And that can take lots of different forms depending on the specific gas and where we get it from. There's, of course, the transmission system, and then there's our distribution system, let alone the point of use in our homes or businesses. And what this means is, one, it's complicated, but two, there's actually a lot of energy that goes into this process to extract energy. And there's a lot of opportunity for the system to be inefficient. And we've learned more and more over the last several years about methane leakages, as an example. And of course, I should not take this for granted. Natural gas is primarily methane, right? So it is an incredibly potent greenhouse gas, up to 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide as it's released into the atmosphere. And so any leakage of methane through this system is really significant in terms of our climate goals and objectives. So I just want to share that this is important for us as we're looking at how we heat our homes in a safe, healthy, and affordable way. And of course, we've got our climate goals. And so we want to understand how we can minimize both the impacts in terms of climate from the way that we heat our homes and the impacts on, family issues like pocketbook issues that people are facing as our energy prices are rising. So just a little history here about Ann Arbor's heating franchise. Our last heating franchise was adopted in 1997. It's a 30-year franchise. This is pretty traditional in the field. In fact, in Michigan, most franchises are 30 years. It's a traditional franchise, largely governing the rights of way. It expires in 2027, but also in Michigan, franchises are revocable at will unless they go to a vote of the people. And a vote of the people can allow them to extend beyond 30 years, but that's rarely done because things change, right? And 30 years is a lot of time. You sort of want to get the best deal you can, and then you go about your business. Now, I do also want to point out that in Michigan, you must have a franchise to provide a utility service. In a second, I'll talk about some of the research we've been doing on our side. There are parts of the country right now that have continued having utility services while still negotiating an expired franchise. That would not be legal in Michigan. So we must have a franchise to provide a given service. And we are very, very interested in looking to integrate our residents' desires for clean, safe, healthy, affordable, and reliable heat into any future franchise. And I have franchises because we are open to lots of different pathways for how we can achieve these goals of clean, safe, healthy, affordable, reliable heating for our residents. And I'm going to use the word heating, but I want to name heating. It's truly what we're talking about here. If you think about, you heat your food, you heat your home, you heat your water. So that's, sorry, that's a framework we'll stick with on this. So just quickly, in terms of what we've done today, we've been reviewing a lot of city franchises, especially newer franchises, and franchises from peer cities that have similarly aggressive climate and equity goals. We've spoken to a number of our peers around the nation. So certainly we've read the materials that they have, but we've also talked to them about their experience, why they chose to do what they did, how they negotiated for what they did, kind of their rationale and their thinking. We certainly reviewed Ann Arbor's previous franchise, and you can find that. Actually, if you're interested, it's listed online. And then we started speaking internally with our other staffs about opportunity for improvement, right? So thinking about the folks that work in the rights of way, what's working really, really well right now in terms of coordination and what's not, and where are there opportunities for refinement. And then we have continued to look at and start talking to other utilities that are doing really aggressive things around affordability, safety, health, and climate action to understand kind of the heating solutions that they're pursuing. And then, this, Council adopted a resolution a few weeks ago directing the city administrator to begin negotiating a new franchise. Importantly, that franchise and that resolution is agnostic to the provider of the service, but reiterates the goals and the objectives. We also launched a website that we're keeping up to date as we're finding more information, and you can see that. And we have launched an email address to start gathering feedback, and we have received some feedback from residents. It's franchisefeedback@a2gov.org, where we're just looking for residents' ideas, their concerns, what they're hopeful for in terms of what a franchise looks like, what they want to make sure that we're thinking about. We're seeing some stories of individuals, their lived experience, and what they want to make sure that we're very intentional about addressing as we move forward in this process. So this is the last kind of talking thing I'm going to put out there. This slide and the next slide just has some general seating questions. This is generative only. Please don't take this as anything other than that. But the idea, as we looked across all these other franchises, and we've been thinking about the goals that we have in the community, some of the things that we've started talking about are negotiating around contract length, certainly the rights of way, how people operate, the communications in that system, finding alternative sources of heating, such as district geothermal or network geothermal systems, having deeper energy efficiency programs, creating new low-income programs, enhancing safety. Gas is not an inherently safe system. So what are we going to do to make sure that we have safety improvements? Working on air quality and health enhancements, price stabilization, right? We've seen fluctuations over the last 2 years in terms of our energy prices. What can we do in that space? Greater accountability, greater transparency into how things operate, coordination, and of course, climate action. So these are some of the variables I just want to put forward as you're starting to think. And now I'm going to be quiet. I'm not meant to answer questions in this session, as you can probably tell. I don't think my voice could take much more. I'm just going to start taking notes, but these are up here just to kind of get you thinking. So Chair Mirsky, I think I'll turn it over to you, and I'm going to grab a pen and paper.
Thank you, Missy. So I think that's really an excellent framing and one that leaves things wide open for our input and for discussion. And that's exactly what we wanted to do tonight. And I think I can safely say, since this is a process that is likely to take a couple of years, that just because you don't say something tonight, that doesn't mean that you can't raise a point next week or next month or potentially even next year. So keep that in mind. And I'm sure that we will be, as a commission, as well as the city, and as well as any maybe support resources we're using, we'll be looking at developments in this field across the country so that we're able to use those lessons learned and best practices here. So with that said, I'd like to open things up for comments and discussion. Commissioner McComber.
I'm curious to know how much leverage we have. Have other cities been able to exercise leverage to achieve some of these goals through their franchise negotiations?
So I'll take that question, but I really don't mean to have a Q&A right now. I'm not going to be, my voice isn't going to take it. I'm sorry. So I'll just share that, yes, they have. And that's why we pointed to some other examples. Happy to come back with more.
Yeah, that's good. So what we'll do here is where it's appropriate and possible, we're just going to capture these points. And the city has a website, as was shown. And so hopefully some of these questions, Missy, maybe maybe we can just say that I can't remember if there's an FAQ. I think there is. Is there an FAQ already there?
Mm-hmm. And we do point to some other cities. So
right.
And
so
the ones that call out explicitly.
Right. With that in mind, let's take this as an opportunity to add questions that could be addressed on the FAQ, not only for our purposes, but also to inform the general public. So, Commissioner Smith.
Great, thank you. So certainly a great starting point in terms of ideas to consider as part of franchise here. I'd be interested and totally understood that this answer may need to be forthcoming. But if you could share the outcomes of the peer city review and any learnings in that process to help us potentially leverage this opportunity to not only further decarbonization goals, but provide clean, safe, reliable energy here. I think that may be helpful if at all possible. And then I think we could provide, be able to better leverage that to provide more specific recommendations in turn.
Thank you. Commissioner McKenna.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Missy, for being here and for sharing this with us. It means a lot to me that we kind of get to look at it together first before it really goes out to the broader audience. And I look forward to participating along the way. I want to share a couple of things that come to mind. Having worked in I guess policy strategy, not specifically in policy, but in strategy, like I mentioned previously in my work with Massachusetts cities and towns that were trying to ban natural gas. There was an effort there, and I know that Missy may be already looking to this, but there was an effort there in Massachusetts because of actually a natural gas explosion that occurred. I believe it was in 2017. There was I think there was a gas utility bankruptcy that happened there, and ultimately there was a chance for actually it was like a self-organized nonprofit along with city and town governments to come together to actually propose a change, like almost very similar in the nature of what's being proposed, or at least the idea that's being proposed, and the kinds of goals around affordability, safety, definitely climate was at the top of the list of goals. And what was proposed in Eastern Massachusetts was this idea of a geothermal network that would provide heating services to businesses and homes in these mainly residential districts on the East Coast. And so I looked at that as one of the, I believe that they're implementing it now. It was funded through, like I mentioned, this bankruptcy of the utility. And so it's cool because they had a lot of funds going into it and a lot of movement around, right? Like a bit of a crisis. So I don't know, I wasn't intending to say this, but I guess I would just advocate for us all to think about actually what we're in as our own kind of crisis and our own kind of opportunity. And although it's not being motivated by, something incredibly tragic, I think that that's great for us. But I think that we should still move with urgency. And I really support what's being proposed. But I will say, I love the idea of these, the research being done with other cities and states, but I would like to kind of raise my concern for, I think, the most intricate part of what would need to happen to actually make an alternative heating franchise work, which is that basically proper enmeshment, not a great word from psychology, but like mixing of energy efficiency retrofits and whatever alternative energy system is proposed. I think that that's a place where Ann Arbor could really be a leader. And I know that a lot of work in energy efficiency retrofits has already been proposed. We heard some great information last time, Missy, about the kind of like deeper engagement with citizens through the concierge process, or just like really getting folks what they need. And so, yeah, I would just stress my support for high quality retrofits coming along with anything that's proposed in terms of a renegotiation of a franchise or a potential alternative energy source. I think just Ann Arbor has the potential to really go above and beyond even what other cities have done. And I think that we shouldn't limit ourselves to just kind of sitting within the what others have done, but really taking the opportunity, given the opportunity that we have with this 2.5 or 3 years to renegotiate and to really dream this up. I think putting everything we have behind it is a great move. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Before I call on the next commissioners, I just want to piggyback on that. For other commissioners and for the general public's interest, there's a nonprofit in the Boston area called HEAT, HEET, and I encourage everyone to look at their website. There are also a couple of videos, actually several videos where they're like webinars or talking about the piloting process. I think Claire mentioned there's pilots that are already at least in process. So I encourage all of you to look at what's going on there, and there's probably other such developments, because this is something that's obviously starting to catch on. There's a lot of other people that are looking this at an opportunity. So maybe, Missy, you can just give a thumbs up or thumbs down. Is HEAT mentioned on the city webpage for the gas franchise?
And I don't know if they are, but we've talked to them a lot, so I can easily add them. And I am going to risk it and say two things really quick. One, Commissioner McComber, and Claire, you mentioned this too. The examples I gave are from other franchises, right? Like, so the ideas of contract length or efficiency, like that's coming from other franchise agreements. So you're starting to see like that, right? The kinds of things. No one has asked for everything that I put on that list, but some have asked for many of those things. And then secondly, I've heard it a few times that this will take until 2027. It's actually not the direction we've been given. We've been given to move as fast as possible. And so we have a goal of within a year and a half to have a renegotiated franchise, because they're terminable at will. So I just want to name that you have a lot of time to think about this, but this is not, oh, ho hum, let's twiddle our fingers till 2027 and have a franchise.
Good points. Commissioner Hart.
Hi, thanks for that. I think my comment is just a clarification about, I think, heating in the franchise. And it's as much a question about what are we really after in the outcomes. And it seems to me that a big part of it is really about thermal comfort, and how we achieve thermal comfort through a variety of different means. And so part of that is just to raise the question in terms of how what are the limitations? What are the requirements? Is this about heating, or is this really about the comfort of people in their homes, in their ability to have warm water, cool water, and comfort in a variety of contexts, versus heating writ large? And so, I don't know the extent to which repitching that kind of approach changes or diversifies the conversation some, but it's just a look, across a variety of different ways in which we might be able to achieve comfort through a variety of different options.
Others, I think Commissioner Calvin Garcia, you had your hand up, but you took it down, or did you have anything to say or share?
Several of the commissioners who have spoken already, and also Missy, you answered my questions. I had several questions and you guys covered it, so thank you.
Great. Others, so I'm going to rattle off a couple of things, and that may allow people also to come up with their own ideas. First of all, I'm wondering, and all these can be answered later, so I don't think you have to attempt to answer any of these tonight. Are there compliance reviews with the current franchise, and has DTE been in compliance with the let's say requirements in the franchise? Related to that, I think one of the things that we definitely want to think about are what kind of SMART goals we want to have for all the different kinds of parameters that you've talked about, and what those associated metrics would be, and what the associated benchmarks or targets would be, not just as a goal 10 or 30 years or whatever it might be out, but hopefully, goals every year or every 5 years or something like that. Some other things that I noted down was who else, if not DTE, and that doesn't again need to be answered. And could that, for example, be a city-owned heating or natural gas franchise? And could that be, for example, an extension of the SEU, or an extension of a fully municipal utility like we've discussed on the electrical side? Do those have to stay separate, or could they be merged, or could they be merged with, there's still two franchises, but maybe the same entity, like a city-owned entity holding that franchise? And then you talked about the aggressive timeline. That's good to hear. The question that I have is, if we are not able to achieve the timeline in the desired, let's say 1.5-year target, it sounds like then we would still have another 1.5 years roughly to be able to go out and find an alternative solution. And I think that that's very prudent. We don't want to negotiate, and then feel like we're backed into a corner without having a some fallback plan, and not just obviously one that we don't really favor, but a good fallback plan. And then I almost certain that this is part of the plan. So there's not only geothermal, but we also have a large wastewater infrastructure. And if you think of all of the showers that we take and all of the other things that we do, and we flush that down into the sewer system, that's one massive geothermal network. So hopefully that's something that we can also consider that potentially could be leveraged and utilized in the new franchise agreement that we negotiate. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to put out there. I'm pretty sure all these things have already been thought of, because I know we have really capable staff and that you've been talking to other entities, but these may be ticklers that lead to other kinds of ideas. So those are the ideas that I had, and hopefully others in the meantime have come up with a few more comments and insights that they want to share. Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, thanks, John. First of all, I agree with a lot of what's already been said. The geothermal possibilities, I mean, that would be great if we could get something like that as a potential option, or I don't even know what other technologies could possibly be similar to that, but I guess possibly it could also have more incentives that would allow a person to transition to something in their own home. I don't know if that's something that could be part of the franchise or not agreement. I don't know how likely it is or other places have done this, but getting a shorter time period than 30 years certainly would give us more leverage, and we could see where things are going. And I mean, we'll know, where we are with our climate goals, maybe a 10-year agreement. Possibly, you could also maybe get more sophisticated with it in terms of certain things that we would like to see, certain conditions that we'd want to be met within a certain number of years in order for the agreement to continue. That would give us more outs from the agreement if they're not doing the things that we want them to do in terms of climate goals or et cetera. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Others? I'll raise two other points that I forgot to mention that have been expressed to me, and that is whether or not the franchise agreement should be transparent in terms of its use of green natural gas. I think there's a lot of concern that we had a presentation, for example, from DTE on what they're doing in the gas area. There's, I think, probably concern in the residents, among residents, that potentially this is an opportunity for DTE to be able to provide green gas. I think another question that residents want to understand is what, if any, role hydrogen might play. As far as I know, hydrogen can be mixed in with natural gas, or possibly even used as a substitute, with a lot of its own questions and issues. So I think we want to make sure that we're transparent with the general public on what we're doing in both of those regards as well. Go ahead, Missy, do you want to say something?
I was just going to close out, unless, yeah. So I will first thank you all so much for your comments. There were two issues I just want to really quickly name, which is we probably will not form a municipal utility on gas because we want to phase down gas, and that would be we couldn't make that business model work, right? If you're trying to drive your model down. That said, there are other things. So I just wanted to name that's the one that I'm not personally super keen on, getting a gas franchise if gas isn't safe, healthy, affordable, and reliable. And then for biogas, just want to share, I don't think we updated you all because we are working on lots of things, but we submitted comments to the Michigan Public Service Commission for the carbon reduction program. A lot of applications that came into that program were biogas-based applications, and we requested denial of all of them as staff based on elements of that. So biogas it's going to have to be something like a biodigester at the wastewater treatment plant, where we're taking, something that's a continual product and transitioning it over. That is my opinion on this issue, but there's very few, I would argue, actual green gas solutions. And perhaps, again, this is just Missy speaking, I think that we may want to preserve those for the hard to decarbonize industries, but that's just my stance. All right, let me close out here with just what's next. And thank you all so much. I know this is a heady. That was maybe not intentional, but I'm enjoying it a lot. That was a heady conversation. So coming soon, we've got town halls that we're starting. We're just starting to look at the calendar right now. You are our first group to go have conversations with. So we're going to go just get ideas from a slew of different stakeholders, especially folks who have no idea about this topic, but really obviously want to make sure that they have heat when they need it. We also are working on a request for ideas. This is for anyone in the public, but also, and perhaps more, for industry and our utility partners around the country to come and give us their ideas. What do you think you could do to help us decarbonize our heating system, to make sure we have safe, healthy, and affordable heating for every resident in Ann Arbor, so that we're basically saying to the marketplace, bring us your really good ideas too. We'll release all of the ideas that come so the public can see them. And then in the interim, if anyone has other thoughts or feedback, the website is open. So please do share any thoughts you have at franchisefeedback@a2gov.org. And that can be, as I mentioned before, we've already got some, but it can be of any flavor. A really great idea that you have, a concern that you're holding, something you want to make sure we consider in the negotiations. Anything is welcome as we move forward. And then the last thing I'd share is staff have started to reach out to utilities, including DT Gas, but others that have goals of decarbonizing heating, to understand the services they provide and to honestly build a bench, if you will, of organizations that we could be in discussions with to make sure that Ann Arborites get the very best deal and best solution to ensure that they have safe, healthy, and affordable heating. Because you've seen this on our website, but in the end, I believe this with my whole heart. No one should have to sacrifice their health to heat and cool their homes. And that's what we believe fundamentally in our office, and we're committed to finding solutions that help people do that. So thanks.
Thank you, Missy. By the way, Missy, unless I misunderstood the image on the right, we might want to switch that because it has the heat going into the ground and has the cool coming out of the ground. So that in a normal geothermal system, we want to do both, obviously, but in this particular case, since we're taking something as a substitute for natural gas, we probably want to extract heat from the ground. So take care of your voice, take care of your health, and thanks for joining us. So the next point on our agenda is the resolution that we considered in a first reading at our last meeting. That's the resolution in support of action on an ordinance to ban natural gas in new construction, and then also interim measures to incentivize, I should say, all electric construction. And just to give a little bit of background on what has happened. So as you may have seen in the materials that were posted, this resolution was also taken up by the Environmental Commission, and it, along with I can't remember what other commission it was, the Housing Rental Commission, I think it was, also provided some feedback. And Claire, I know that you also provided some feedback, and that was taken into account in the version that was considered in a first reading by the Environmental Commission. And since then, I shared a Google Doc with Claire, and what you're going to see is what is the current state of what we are considering. Since we already had in our last meeting a motion to consider this resolution and a second, I don't think we need to go through that formality again. This is still open, so it's open for discussion. So what I'd like to do is, Joe, ask you that you please bring up the resolution so that everyone can view it and we can go through it. It stands more or less as it was, with some minor changes. We also heard some comments in the public comment section. Again, in black, or as in this case now in white print, is the original version of the resolution that we considered last month. Red are changes that emerged out of the Environmental Commission in its meetings, and blue are some additional recommended changes that came up in the last month. So if you can scroll down, I don't know that we have to read all of this since we read it. So let's look at, if you can go up a little bit so we can see the original, and then this so you can see there were some minor changes here in red. And these are what you might call some factual changes or some technicalities that were changed, or some additional clarification in red. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to scan that. And then if you can go down to the next section with a contrast between what was striked out and what the new text is, I'll let everybody read this. So hopefully people have had a chance to read that and make any notes of comments or questions that they want to make. Joe, can you scroll up again? Or the other way, sorry, down, I mean, sorry. So no changes were made here. So opening things up for discussion, I see that Commissioner Calvin Garcia has her hand raised. Go ahead, Carlene.
Can you scroll up just a little bit, where just a little bit more? Okay, stop. Okay, go down just a little bit. Okay, so the paragraph in red at the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
Okay,
whereas
so
high
where it says
efficiency cold climate heat pumps, that paragraph or that whereas clause. Yep.
yes, I would recommend adding the word differences after the word operating. Or difference.
Before cost, you mean right there where the cursor is?
Correct. What do you
Any
think about
operating
that? Cost difference. I'm sorry, after the word cost.
Okay. Difference. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
That was it.
Good catch.
That was it.
Anything else? Okay, Commissioner Hart.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just to say that, you know, I'm primarily inclined to support the resolution, and there was just a couple of things that have come up just recently that I just wanted to draw attention to. It sounds like as of last week, the Bureau of Construction Codes may have withdrawn the rulemaking around the Uniform Energy Code, from what I'm understanding, to clarify sort of how they reference and are designing the rule sets. I believe that's going to be going out once they do that for public comment again. So all of that to say is, from what I understand of where the process might be, is that that's going to further perhaps delay adoption of an updated energy code and potentially net zero appendices and things like that. For my understanding, that was just from an email today about the rulemaking process itself that came from Laura and the Bureau of Construction Codes. So that's germane to this, obviously, in a couple different whereas clauses. But I do think that still that language, obviously, they're not going to adopt it in sort of the near term, so that seems to still apply. I did want to make and perhaps suggest some changes to the second resolved clause, primarily based on the comments of one of the callers today. And it would be to strike the word interim right before carrot and stick. And also to add, in addition to all electric and sustainable, the notion of healthy, reliable, and affordable to that as well. And to sort of find ways to both balance and prioritize all of those in the ways that whatever construction incentives are designed can help support all of those values. And further, to potentially strike the part where it says after construction until such a time that a permanent match ban ordinance and other measures such as, and perhaps substitute in addition to other measures, such as an updated State of Michigan Energy Code and adoption of Zero Code Appendix. You know, the primary impact of that being that this resolution may then urge the city council to ask the city administrator to work with the planning commission and to pass recommended measures around sustainable, promote all electric sustainable construction, not necessarily as an interim measure or irrespective of any natural gas limitations, but in addition to.
Did Commissioner Harp, did all of your suggested comments get reflected?
Yeah, what was that last part? Or where should I put that?
Yeah, let me restate that. So starting, it'd say healthy, reliable, and affordable construction. In addition to other measures such as an updated state of Michigan energy code. And adoption of the zero code appendix.
So you're saying like remove this part here?
Yeah, essentially remove everything and everything after until.
Okay. And so then say such as zero code appendix.
Yeah. Or such as an updated state Michigan energy code and zero net appendix.
So the zero code, Joe, is spelled all caps.
Yeah.
Zero code. Yeah. Just like 820. Nope. All the whole world. Yep. Exactly. Nope. Zero. Yep. ZERO capital and then code. Yep.
Thank you.
So, we'll probably come back to that. Let's get other commissioners' comments and then discuss some of those. Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, it's kind of a technical thing, but if you go up to the Environmental Commission's additions, it's higher up, but particularly the blue part where they're referencing they represent nitrogen as well as carbon monoxide in another spot as a criteria air pollutant. And I sort of get why they're doing that. For those of you who don't know, there's very little, if any, legal regulations or laws when it comes to indoor air pollution. And these as well don't really apply to indoor air pollution. These are based on the ambient outdoor air. So it's kind of like, it's not the worst to include them, but I don't know that it really adds a lot to the argument to have it in there.
Yeah, admittedly, I added those, and you are correct. That the only regulations are for outdoor air as opposed to indoor air. Are you hearing an echo? So Noah, do you recommend that we strike that?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning just to leave that part out. I mean, a lot of people probably won't even necessarily know the difference and they'll just kind of maybe gloss over it. But my recommendation would be just to leave that part out. I wish there was something we could cite to that was a little bit better, but there just really isn't, unfortunately, in terms of the health issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go ahead and strike that. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping we could go back to the resolution clauses for a moment. I too wanted to just raise consideration or concern as it relates to the second clause in particular, seeing consideration or concerns raised by Commissioner Harp and Mr. Garber earlier, that perhaps the second clause is in direct, the second resolve clause is in direct conflict with the first resolve clause, wanting to acknowledge the importance and the value of a near-term interim solution while we work towards a more comprehensive long-term solution. But perhaps maybe a question, and I should also add that these updates may mitigate against that. But if I don't know if it's Commissioner Mirsky, if you could speak to like the vision for this second clause, like how long you would think about it for kind of the implementation period, and perhaps to the extent, I don't know if this is Joe that could speak to, it sounds like perhaps some of this may already be in process as well.
So maybe I can speak first to it and then Joe can comment. So actually, the original version of this that was written was drafted by Mr. Garber, and it only had the first clause. However, as he mentioned in his comments today, and I knew at the time that in a package provided to the Planning Commission, as he mentioned, there was a letter from legal counsel representing the Home Builders Association indicating that they would sue the city if the city attempted to affect a natural gas ban or at least severe restrictions on the use of natural gas and when it would be allowed. And if that indeed was the case and that would be litigated, then my thinking was that that litigation could take anywhere from a couple of weeks or a couple of months to potentially a very long time. And in the meantime, there's nothing that the city would be able to do, or at least it would be put it this way, there would be nothing necessarily in process that it could do to incentivize all electric construction. And that could be any number of different things. It could be incentives that are financial incentives. It could be processing incentives where potentially all electric facilities or developments would be processed more quickly. There are also fees that the city charges for new construction, for hookup fees, and those could be modified. For example, they could be increased if it was a natural gas connected development, and they could be decreased or decreased for those that are all electric. Former Energy Commission Chair Wayne Appleyard, I think, mentioned in a call in last month, but I know that also for sure in an email to me and a couple of others, I believe, I don't know if they were energy commissioners or not, had suggested that there could even be some type of moratorium on natural gas development. He cited the fact that in other jurisdictions or in municipalities, there have been moratoriums. So this second resolve clause was simply an attempt to have a fallback plan where we don't put all of our eggs in one basket and then have that effort be undermined or delayed, so that there's something that's being done in the meantime to push developers together with their architects and their other partners in projects to move to all electric or to a higher degree of electrification than what they might otherwise do if there were no other, let's say, requirements in place or no other regulations in place. That was the intent. Joe, do you want to comment on anything else that I haven't addressed, or?
I don't really have anything more from my end. I think what you're saying and stuff makes sense. But most of those things will be outside of my purview of what I'm working on. It'd be kind of in other areas. But
That's very helpful context. And I guess, to that end, I'm wondering if it would be helpful to ensure that kind of the second resolve clause is more of a complementary approach, as opposed to perhaps a near-term interim step that may prolong, I think, ideally, the resolution that would come in that first paragraph.
Do you have any specific wording suggestions?
Good question.
I mean, well, you have to bring things to paper. So,
yeah, totally understood. Absolutely. Yeah. So, something to the effect of, provided that, a resolution could not be passed, then the second resolution would be in effect, essentially.
Yeah. So my thought was that if you take the first resolve clause, that there are two possible scenarios. One is that even if the city, together with the Planning Commission and any other entities that it's working with, is working on regulating natural gas connections, that could take a long time to do that and to seek the possible legal counsel and the input from other cities that have attempted to do this. My understanding is that Planning Department has done that, and that whether that takes some time or whether it's actually even passed very quickly, but because of legal action or something else beyond our control, that's delayed. The implementation of that is delayed one way or the other. So that's the concern that is addressed then in the second one, so that even, let's say, there was a timetable to implement without any kind of challenge, some type of restrictions. But what this does is it asks that there are measures that are taken that could be taken potentially immediately. So, for example, it could be that in a matter of days or weeks or maybe a month or two, that the city could say, well, we're going to do X and Y and Z. X and Y are carrots, and Z is a stick to drive all or to promote all electric, sustainable, healthy, reliable, and affordable construction. That's the thought. Commissioner
Yeah,
Hart.
very helpful. And so I think, to that end, the kind of suggested updates by Commissioner Harp, I believe, with, eliminating interim and suggesting these are additional measures would satisfy, that need then, or my recommendation. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Harp, your hand was up for a second. There you go.
Yeah, I think a little bit just to follow on Commissioner Smith's comments, I think, yeah, part of the motivation is also that even if the construction were all electric, part of the fuel mix may not be entirely sustainable. And so anything that can be done to improve sustainability, reliability, affordability around that as well, I think will be helpful and contribute to the goals. I may also suggest, in addition, some additional language as I was looking at that, in addition to the carrot and stick measures, and this would go after where it says such as tax credits, comma, and I would suggest helpful guidance in order to promote it. And so where it's not, where the goal is also not necessarily just economic incentives, but also informational ones, and ones that can be helpful, whether it's guidance or examples, case studies, things like that help builders and developers identify how to get there in ways that contribute to the other measures that we might ask for.
Good idea. I know that there's some activity going on outside the Energy Commission where there's a couple of people that are working on taking one of the projects that was recently approved and reviewing their calculations with at least let's say a strong sense that the differences between in cost in particular and utility costs between all electric and natural gas heated construction is not as great as what was originally believed. So that's this helpful guidance kind of thinking that you're promoting here. And I think that's a good idea. Commissioner McKenna.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some comments here. You know, I have experience working in on the developer side. You know, in the city of Boston, where the city was trying to actually, they hadn't passed any kind of natural gas ban or ordinance yet, but it's a matter of this like carrot and stick. Like, what is the reality of that interplay when you're thinking about developers and city government ultimately planning approval for a project? I don't know. I just feel kind of disgruntled around the idea of providing guidance. Like, I just don't see that. I mean, it's definitely like, it's like a really positive take on it, but like, I just don't see that actually helping move our goals forward. And I just wonder if there isn't any legal basis for requiring the change. Is there a basis for requiring, you know, a study? Like, that's kind of how I saw the city of Boston kind of move towards an ordinance, is that they were requiring developers to provide information about what that project could do. Like, tell us, like, provide a report, an engineering report. Why is this not? Why are you not capable of doing all electric? Like, prove to us that this is the system that you have to use. And I think I don't know. I just feel like it's definitely not my place to suggest you know, how the planning department should go about their business and approve projects. But, you know, ultimately I would want to see more, if I can provide my own pie in the sky, like the way I think from my experience working with developers and cities to move climate goals forward, is to put the burden of proof on the developers. And again, I don't know if the legal basis, if we have that legal basis, but I would want to see, yeah, more of that lift being taken by the developers themselves, even if it's not to change the project systems, but just to kind of build a resource at least of these reports where we can say, well, you know, this was what was provided. And I don't know. Sorry if that's a little scattered, but it's something I've been like holding on to for weeks and months. And I just want to kind of throw out there, like, where are we at on, I see that it feels like a little bit of a pullback, and now we're talking about guidance and we're talking about carrots and sticks, but like, ultimately, is that getting us any closer to what the goal is here?
I think that is helpful. I'm presently not aware of any specific index or calculation that can be done that would indicate whether or not one, I mean, what we're trying to do is optimize on a number of different variables. And, you know, it could be partially natural gas, it could be all electric. I mean, we know probably, or some, I think if you know that Robertson Brothers is doing a project on the north side of town where they made some changes to their proposal where the single family residences are going to be all electric, but the garden apartments are going to be electric except for the HVAC, the heating, the air heating portion of the proposal. I don't know how they arrived at that. I don't think they provided detailed calculations, although I do know that they provided some information to planning. What I would say here is that this is not prescriptive. We're just suggesting that the city with staff and the city administration look at a variety of carrots and sticks. And that could be indeed what you suggested, that they would have to provide some type of engineering calculations. It could be tax credits. It could be, as I said, a change in the fee structure for hookups. It could be any number of different things. And I don't know that we need to list all of those. But what we want to get across is that, as Mr. Garber said, there's roughly one new project that's been approved since A20 itself was approved that are natural gas connected. And so this is just simply saying, hey, we want to call this to city council and administration's attention. Not that they don't already know, but we want to give them a nudge or a push to be able to do something as quickly as possible, because what we see, the outcomes are one new project every month. Commissioner McKenna.
Yeah, then that's great. Thank you. I just want to add one element then that's maybe more clear from my experience working with developers, and also seeing the projects going up in Ann Arbor, and frankly talking to developers in Ann Arbor. I think that the major obstacle to actually getting rid of gas, if that is the goal, is the reticence on the part of the developers to even agree that they have an understanding of what is possible. From what I've heard, talking to developers, both in our city and across the country, there is, and it's actually similar to this Home Builders Association take on it, right? I think the construction industry has a bit of a cohesive approach to fighting back on changing the status quo related to our energy systems. And frankly, I think that one of the biggest obstacles right now that the city faces is getting developers to come to the table to admit that there are options. And I think the longer that they can stand on their hill and deny that there are other options, I think that every single day gets us one step backwards. And so, I don't have specific language to propose, but I'd like to just share with everybody here and everybody listening on the phone, like that's what I see as the biggest obstacle.
I think when we had the presentation from Tim McDonald, who is president and CEO of Onion Flats in the fall of last year, we talked about people operating under old paradigms and new paradigms. And I think that's what you're addressing, is that there's a lot of old paradigms that are governing projects. And that's to be expected, because that's what we all do to some degree or another, even in our own daily lives, as we operate under paradigms. So I'm not hearing any suggestions for any additional changes. Again, these are several things that are listed as such as. It's not intended to be all inclusive. The hope is that city staff, as well as council, will look at the various levers it has and do its best to reduce the number of new natural gas connected, or let's say projects that are heated one way or another with natural gas, whether it's cooking, or whether it's hot water, or whether it's heating of air. Any other thoughts before we take a vote on this? Councilmember Radina.
Thanks, Chair Murski. I appreciate the conversation and I'm listening a lot. I also just want to add, I think we have heard from a lot of developers about the challenges around all electric, but we'll note that at our very last council meeting, we did approve a new 79 unit apartment complex that will be all electric from day one. And so I think it could potentially also be helpful for the commission to engage with some of the developers doing this work in the community to develop a framework that might be able to get shared out to others who are telling us this narrative that they can't do that. And so I think that could be something to add to the queue for future conversations for this body. I will say this is another one of those kind of awkward circumstances where I have a vote on this commission for something that we are having a lot of conversations about at the council table. And so I am not sure if I am allowed to do this necessarily, but I'm going to try. I will likely be abstaining tonight, simply because it's not necessarily reflective of my position on the merits of no new gas connections, but rather because we are having these conversations with our legal staff about our various legal pathways forward to achieve our 820 goals. And because this resolution will undoubtedly be subject to further analysis and discussion, I just need to engage in further discussion with our city attorney's office and our city staff before supporting this particular pathway.
Fully understood. And indeed, we hope that is indeed the case, that you do that. Other comments? So Joe, if you can stop sharing and we'll go back to screen where we can see everyone. I'd like to call for a vote. Again, we already had a motion to consider and a second, so I think we can move on directly to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And any abstentions? Yes, okay. So the resolution as amended passes, and thanks for all of your careful consideration of it and the comments that you made. I think we ended up with a better product. So, great. So the next thing on the agenda is a discussion about the Energy Commission chair and the vice chair elections. And there are no documents prepared as far as I know on this. There was no link, if I recall correctly. But I thought what I would do is open up the discussion. It's really more for your information than it is discussion, but we can certainly include discussion at the end. The bylaws has an article number 6, which is titled Officers. And paraphrasing the bylaws, it states officers consisting of both the chair and the vice chair shall be elected each year for 1-year terms by a majority of the commissioners that are currently serving on the commission. It says no member shall serve more than 3 consecutive full terms in the same office. And finally, that the term of each officer's shall run from June 1st through May 31st of the following year. So Carlene and I, and then Carlene and Joe and I had discussions about this because Carlene and I have both served for 3 years in our respective positions. And we didn't want to just bring this up in the May meeting and not have everybody fully aware of what the circumstances are and what the duties and things like that are. So what we just basically want to inform everyone is that we will have officer elections on the agenda in our May meeting, and that Carlene and I cannot serve in our current positions. I think what I'd like to do is go on and mention a couple of other of the duties of the chair. So basically the vice chair serves as a backup, if you will, and a sparring partner with the chair. So generally speaking, I do my best to keep Carlene informed of everything that I'm doing from my side. Carlene does the same for me. And Carlene then is there should I not be able to make a meeting. I think that's happened once, maybe, or twice in the 3 years that I've served as chair. So what are our duties, or what are my duties primarily as chair? First of all, one of the things that we do is that we take a leading role or a significant role in the nomination process for new commissioners. So as you know, commissioners are appointed or nominated by the mayor's office, and they are voted on by city council. And we provide nomination recommendations to the mayor's office. That doesn't mean that the mayor necessarily has to follow those, but we provide those as recommendations. This year, for example, at the end of May, we are going to have 4 openings. So that means, there's a fair amount of work. We have had basically openings almost every year, and occasionally we've had people step down early. And what that then entails is we get a list of all the nominations, or excuse me, all the applicants, I should say. And we get, as you probably know, from having applied, we get an application that's filled out, as well as a resume. And then the application includes personal comments and some short essays. So we review those as a group. I have taken all of those and put those into an Excel spreadsheet. So we have one document that is an easy reference document that we can all look at in a meeting, and we're not shuffling between a whole bunch of different papers. So there's some time obviously involved in that, both in the reading of the applications, as well as in the meeting, and then some prep time in front of that meeting. Another thing that we do as chair and vice chair is we have a meeting with staff liaison 8 days before every meeting. So we meet on Tuesdays. So on the Monday of the preceding week, we have a half-an-hour meeting, and we discuss agenda items, both for the upcoming meeting as well as for future meetings. That's, like I said, a 30-minute meeting, maybe another 30 minutes preparation. One of the things that I always do as chair is review meeting materials in advance. And if they're posted, Joe has done an excellent job of doing that. But in the past, we've had cases where something wasn't posted or it wasn't linked properly or whatever. So I always double check that. The agenda, the minutes, and the presentations. Another thing that I do as chair is I review all the resolutions that have been proposed. I in many cases, I've coordinated those, putting them in Google Doc form, participating in reviews outside of this meeting. You may recall, for those of you who were on the commission at the time when we voted on the feasibility study, that was debated over a number of different meetings, and that feasibility study resolution also went through a couple of iterations. So that's another duty of the chair. Another duty is simply communication with those in the community who want to communicate with the chair of the Energy Commission. So occasionally there are people in the community that feel that they have something to share with the commission or with the commission chair. And just like in some cases where they're probably reaching out to you individually, that often happens to me. I guess finally, I'd like to say that this is probably just like any other volunteer job. So you, as a volunteer, you can do the job with very limited time involvement and just come to the meetings and read the scripts and do nothing else. And you can sort of go with the flow, or you can be really involved and put a lot of time in it. So, that I think those are the kinds of things that I would ask all of you to consider in terms of either nominating yourself to fill one of those roles or nominating someone else. And we will do that in the next meeting. So we will take both nominations as well as we'll vote on those openings in the next meeting. I had made some notes and I think I've covered everything. And what I'd like to do is recognize Commissioner Calvin Garcia as co-chair to see if she has anything that she would like to add before I open it up for any comments or discussion.
I'd like to underscore what Commissioner Mirsky was talking about with regards to the review of applications for energy commissioners and the selection process that we've gone through. That's something that we've taken very seriously in our role. And one of the contributions that Commissioner Mirsky has brought to the commission is onboarding the new members. So that's something that would be, I propose as a recommendation, whether if you do it as a team or if you do it with a city liaison, however you would like to do that. I'd like to make sure that the onboarding is something that's part of what you're aware of. Many of you went through that process, and you can remember how that benefited you and your participation on the Energy Commission.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forgot to mention that. Generally speaking, we've tried to do those in groups, but that's not always the case. So sometimes those have happened individually. Joe, you had comments, and then Councilmember Radina after that.
Yeah, I wanted to note we'll still continue doing that. We're also working, myself and some of the other staff liaisons, working with our clerk's office to develop a more standard set of onboarding. So that'll take some of the pressure off. Would still obviously involve being in that process, getting to know people, getting everyone up to speed. But just letting everyone know you wouldn't have to create a whole set of documents and everything. Here's all the things you need to know on what it is to be a commissioner, stuff like that. A lot of that back end stuff will be handled.
Just as an FYI, an attempt was made in the past to do that, and that individual then left city employment, and then it fell back on the commission chairs. So that's certainly welcome, and that would standardize things and allow for best practices and lessons learned to be developed and done as far as that onboarding. But there's probably an expectation that new energy commissioners are going to want to hear specifics about the Energy Commission. So keep that in mind. Councilmember Radina.
Thanks, Chair Mirsky. Just wanted to also just briefly emphasize that the reason we're looking for a new chair and vice chair is because John and Carlene have put in so many years of service in these roles. And so this is not a knock on other commission chairs, but they are some of our hardest working chairs that I've worked with. That does not mean that somebody who is stepping into this role fresh will immediately be able to fill their shoes exactly the way that they are doing it now. And so I also just want to add that, because I know it can feel like a lot and a heavy burden and a heavy lift, but they have years of experience and learnings and time that they have put into this. And so if this is something you're interested in, I really do encourage you to think about it. But I also just want to acknowledge all of the work that they've given and the time that they've given to the city and to this commission, because they do put in a ton of work. I hear from John probably more regularly than almost any other commission chair, and both for this and all of the other things he cares about in the city. And so it is one of those things that it's, the amount of time that you put into it. I do think there is kind of a bare minimum expectation that does require a heavier lift than if you were just a member of the commission. But I certainly would not expect anyone to be able to step in and immediately be doing everything that John does day to day, because he's had a lot of time to really learn how to do this role.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's, I should make the point, Carlene and I are not running away. We remain on the commission, and we will certainly be there to help anybody through the transition. Joe has really done a great job as staff liaison. I want to, be sincere about this. Joe's been really, really good to work with. And when Joe knows things, he's always chiming in. And when Joe doesn't know things, he is someone who says, I'm going to go out and I'm going to figure that out, or I'll talk to Missy or whomever else. And he comes back, and he's really, really reliable on that. So one of the things that I'd like to point out is that, you have others that you can depend on. And that includes our council member liaisons. They regularly call me and talk to me about our discussions in this meeting, and they give me guidance. They tell me their thoughts. So that's also very helpful. So you can really depend on a number of people helping you from various corners. Any other questions or comments? So what I should have paused a little bit longer there. You can still raise your hand, but what I wanted to say is you can talk amongst each other. You can talk to Carlene or me. You can talk to Joe. You can talk to the two council liaisons. But think about this. Give it, please, some thought between now and our meeting next month. And hopefully we'll have some people step forward and fill our shoes and do hopefully even a better job going forward. Councilmember Radina.
I will add the caveat to that you can absolutely talk to someone, encourage them. What you should not do is talk about who you all might support for chair or something like that. Don't do something that would be a deliberation.
Yeah.
So just want to add that caveat.
Right. Yep. Good point. Thank you. That has to happen in this forum, not behind the scenes. Very good. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions of us? And again, you don't have to pose these tonight. You're free to. Yeah. Go ahead, Commissioner McComber.
Just to clarify, the two of you have served your 3 consecutive terms as chair and vice chair, but there's nothing that says that the two of you couldn't serve in the other role.
That is correct.
Okay.
I don't know if either of us are willing. We probably still want to sleep on that
right.
between now and then. And Carlene and I have discussed that. And, we can each share our thoughts in the May meeting. But yes, strictly speaking, yes, that's true.
Right. And just to clarify, at the May meeting, the intention is to have an agenda item where nominations are made.
Election of the new officers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You have this next month to deliberate on this and have conversations with each other and with yourselves.
Okie doke.
And be in contact with us too. If you want to throw things, like at us and any ideas or please do. Absolutely. I'm available.
And remember, it's a 1-year commitment. It's not a 3-year commitment or anything like that.
Right.
Okay, great. So winding things down here. We next have an energy report, news from the Energy Office and from commissioners, including council members. Go ahead, Joe.
That me? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I started going and I was double questioned myself.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as we mentioned previously, a lot of the updates, we've been switching over our newsletter, so everything should be in there. So please check those out. If you haven't already, you should be subscribed, but there is a couple things in there. Let me just check to make sure there's any we haven't discussed here. We do have a couple of events coming up. There'll be a couple of things on Earth Day, one at the Leslie Science and Nature Center. Our sustainability series is ongoing. I think it's the last Wednesday of the month. The next upcoming one is on April 26th. It's around renewables, looking at the future of renewables in Ann Arbor, which is fairly relevant to everything you got going on here. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can sign up. It is both in person and via Zoom. We, as you saw, we're currently recruiting people for this commission as well as others. We'll be reviewing applicants soon, as John had already talked about. But if you know anyone who might be interested, feel free to reach out to them. We also, I think we've talked about a little bit before, but the Commercial Solarize program has launched in collaboration with the 2030 district. They're currently piloting the program with a couple different entities. This is fairly similar to the Solarize process that you're all know and love. But yeah, it's just kind of one-on-one assistance with specific commercial entities. Speaking of pilots, we are also going through the pilot for the Energy Concierge. We're working on a couple different naming things, so it might not end up still being called the Energy Concierge, but it'll be the same thing that's happening. But we are currently conducting that pilot and also looking out for additional people who might be interested in participating in it. We're very much looking to get as much of a diversity as we possibly can with the people in the pilot. So we don't just, want solely single family homes. We don't just solely want renters, but kind of everything and anything in between, so we can make sure that the program is addressing as many constituents as possible. Some of the things we still certainly have need for are any landlords, renters, and individuals with lower incomes to kind of help better inform that pilot. That is all I have for now. We're also very busy-ish in not necessarily grant season, but lots of grants are ongoing. We have a couple that have already been submitted, a couple that are in the process of being submitted, and then some others that we were hoping to hear back from by now, but kind of have been pushed down as the grantors need more time to decide. So hopefully by the next meeting, we might have more information on any of those grants, but that's where we are now. Back to you.
Thank you. Before I forget, one of the commission openings is a youth commissioner. So as Joe said, please get the word out that we have openings on the commission. And one of the obviously steps that we've taken, or city council actually took, was create these youth commissioner positions on both the Energy and Environmental Commission. And hopefully we get some good candidates. So those of you who are interacting with people that are interested in energy and climate, that are young, that would be interested in serving, please encourage them to get in an application.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, John. And also just for folks who aren't aware, those positions are only they're 1-year terms. So if you're sitting there, say you're in college or in high school or something like that, and like, I don't know if I can commit to 3 years right now, it does not have to be a commitment of the traditional 3-year term.
Exactly.
Is it possible to submit like a renewal if any of our youth want to do that?
Yeah, so it certainly could be a year-over-year term if that is of interest, as long as you're still. I think it goes. What does it go up till 25? I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to clarify. I think this one is 25. It does vary by commission. Some commissions, I think youth commissioner is younger than that, but I think it's 25 on this one, and I do believe it's renewable until they hit that. I think if they are appointed before they are 25, they can serve after they are 25 for the remainder of that term.
Mm-hmm. Okay, updates from other commissioners, news of interests, and then we'll move from there to council members. Council member update. Anything of interest? Council member Adina, do you want to update us on anything coming or happening from council?
Yeah, I don't have any additional major updates other than the one I just gave about the all-electric approval that we did at the last meeting, and that as you heard during public comment, we are very much moving into our budget phase. Budgets will be formally presented. The administrator's proposed budget will be formally presented to council at our next meeting, and it needs to be approved. The final budget is required to be approved by the second meeting in May, which is May 15th. And so we're going to enter a period here of all budget all the time, pretty much, because it's a relatively short time frame for us to dive into the budget, negotiate out any amendments, things like that. And so, but if there are particular areas of interest that to you, there's a public facing website for the budget process where you can see existing presentations that have been submitted to council. And then I believe the administrator's full budget will also be posted there.
I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's only based on the public comment that we had at the beginning of the meeting. Do you know if there's any provision in the budget for a potential second phase feasibility study for a municipal utility?
I wrote it down as a note to look into, but I don't know it off the top of my head if that is currently being budgeted for or not.
Right. It would just have to be some kind of provision, either a willingness to dip into the reserve or whatever it might be to be able to fund that if it's indeed deemed necessary. Great. If you maybe go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and that is the case also. I mean, if it is not necessarily budgeted for, a supermajority of council can pass an expenditure beyond the or outside of the typical budget. It's
Right.
always easier to include it in the budget because then we have to find out where that money is coming from. But I took that note as well to make sure that that's something I pay attention to.
Great. Great. Anyone else?
I have a last minute question.
Yes, please.
Did we ever get the electric refuse truck?
Still in process. There's been lots and lots of delays. I'm not sure what they all are, but it's all been, in process. I wish I had a better answer for when that was coming, but yes.
Okay, thanks.
Great. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I just penciled down some things, so I hope I have this in the right order. I think the next thing is a report from the Environmental Commission. And as liaison, I'll tackle that quickly. First of all, there was a presentation and a discussion on new and existing construction in floodplains. That continues to be an issue because particularly in the Allen Creek area, but not just limited to there, there is new construction that is being proposed or contemplated. And so there was a general presentation on that. Anyone that's interested in that topic, I encourage you to either watch the video or go to the agenda and look at the presentations. Presentation was given by Jerry Hancock, and Brian Stiglitz was also there. So they talked about that. The next thing that they talked about was, we talked about was this same resolution related to natural gas. So I don't think I need to go into that. You saw what they considered and what we finally passed. And then the last thing was that in preparation for 2024, there was a kickoff, a discussion on policy recommendations for that time frame. So I think most of you know that the city has a lobbyist and they have other means of focusing attention on certain policy issues. And there's actually a formal document that is adopted every year by City Council outlining its priorities. And the Environmental Commission missed providing input on that when it was updated. I think it was actually approved in January. And so they had an initial discussion of that and raised a couple things that were related more to things unrelated to climate and energy, things like pollinators and water, clean air, clean water, things like that. So there was initial discussion on that. That's it from the Environmental Commission. Joe, remind me what comes next. Agenda for the next meeting or public input?
Public input.
Okay. So we will have on our second opportunity for public comment. And this is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, the instructions are the same as at the beginning of the meeting. Call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 956-8728-7876. The information is displayed on the meeting agenda and the video feed. City staff will select callers who have raised their hand one by one, using the last 3 digits of your phone number to raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, plus *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated message that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, move to a quiet area so that we may hear you clearly. And finally, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments.
Caller ending in 134.
Thank you, Mr. Lang and Chair Murphy. It's Ken Garber again. Thank you, everyone, for passing the resolution tonight and for the great discussion. I agree with Commissioner McKenna on the need to put the burden of proof on developers for why they can't electrify. Planning Commission, to its credit, does ask this question, but it doesn't require any documentation, and it's forced to take developer statements at face value. I don't have Commissioner McKenna's experience, but I've been meeting with some developers on this issue, and what has most struck me is the complete absence of any sense of shared responsibility for the climate crisis. Instead of joining our collective effort, they basically say it's not their problem. Most don't even pretend to care. A few do. They raise technical issues, but usually in bad faith, in a self-serving way. They don't like to change the way they do things, and they don't like government telling them they have to. So we really need an ordinance. We're not going to get voluntary compliance, except at huge cost to the public purse. I mean, the North Maple project is great, but it was a PUD, so they had to come in with a public benefit, and these days that means electrification. But for by right projects, we're just going to see resistance going forward unless we take forceful action. One thing we should not do is use public funds to pay private developers to install heat pumps and solar panels. And we're already starting to do that. Chair Mirsky mentioned the Robertson Brothers project and the electrification of the for sale homes. The impression given all along was that Robertson was paying for those heat pumps as well as solar panels on their clubhouse and to power their streetlights. I thought that too. But it turns out that the public, in fact, is paying through the non-environmental portion of the brownfield plan for the site to the tune of $2.9 million, including carrying costs. Basically a gift to the developer from taxpayers. This was done behind closed doors with almost no transparency. I talked about this last week at County Commission. The public should not pay private developers to do what they should already be doing on their own. Terrible precedent. Now developers can say, why should I put in heat pumps and solar panels on my dime? You want them? You pay for them. This really needs to stop right now. Thank you again for all your work and for the great discussion tonight.
Thank you for your comments.
No further callers.
Okay. I'll wait just 10 seconds or so. Okay, next on the agenda, or last point on the agenda other than adjournment, is topics for the next meeting. So we've already heard elections will be on the agenda. We also still anticipate a review of hydroelectric power generation on the city's dams. That has been planned. So unless something unforeseen happens, we expect a presentation on that from Public Works Department. Just FYI, we have 4 dams, 2 of which generate hydropower. So we'll talk about that. And then Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a possibility that we will have an update on the home energy rating disclosure ordinance in May. Is that still possible?
Yeah, we'll have to check to see, but certainly, hopefully coming soon.
Yep. So expect that in either May or June. Any other proposals, any other desires, not only for May, but for upcoming meetings? Okay, silence is golden. Any ideas can be submitted, obviously, to Joe, Carlene, or me, so you don't have to raise them in this meeting. And that indeed, that's what happened on the hydro power one. Alex reached out to me, and we were able to secure staff to make that presentation. So you can follow Alex's lead in doing that. I think that's it. As chair, I'm calling this meeting, I'm adjourning this meeting. It is 7:56 p.m. and I can tell my wife that we did finish in less than 2 hours. So she was very doubtful that that was going to happen, but we did it this time. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks all.
Take care.